Nigel the J50 had learned much from his time as station pilot. He'd met many different engines, all of which had given him plenty of advice and told him many tales of adventures that had occurred on the railway. Some of it seemed too outrageous to be true. Not only was Nigel encountering lots of engines, he was also being approached by many enthusiasts. They would visit the big station, not to catch a train, but to watch Nigel work. Nigel hadn't been out much when he had first been rescued by the Bluebell Railway, and some enthusiasts didn't know he existed. To them, Nigel had come back from the dead. "You're the sole surviving J50, explained his driver. "You're quite an important locomotive." "Oh, please," said Nigel modestly. "I'm nowt special. I'm just lucky to be here." Whilst Nigel was pleased he was representing his long-lost class, he did find all the attention rather uncomfortable and unwelcome. There was one engine Nigel had not been introduced properly to. Two coaches stood on a siding at the big station that Nigel wasn't allowed to touch. Of course, we know they are Annie and Clarabel and are Thomas's coaches, but Nigel didn't. He thought they must belong to a big important engine. When at last Nigel saw who the engine was, he was very surprised. The little blue tank engine shunted his coaches into platform 3. "Hello, you must be Nigel, the new station pilot. I'm Thomas." "All right there, Thomas. I didn't know those coaches were yours." "Of course. I run my branch line with Annie and Clarabel," Thomas beamed proudly. "Really? You have a branch line?" asked Nigel in bemusement. "Oh, yes. I used to be the station pilot myself a long time ago. I worked my way up from the bottom, and now look at me. I have big responsibilities, and so could you one day." Nigel paused. "So could I." "Indeed," chuckled Thomas. "Being station pilot wasn't very challenging. I wanted to see the world. I wanted so much more. Every tank engine does." "Well, Thomas, let me put it to you this way. I don't have ideas above my station." Thomas looked hurt. "What do you mean by that?" "I know my place on this railway. I'm a shunter like you. I shunt. I already have big responsibilities. I don't want to see the world. Not every tank engine does. I'm happy being station pilot. Alright, it wasn't for you, but don't you dare try and demean my work, all because you've forgotten where you came from." Thomas let off steam loudly. "Who do you think you are?" he snarled crossly. "I know full well who I am," retorted Nigel. "I'm an engine who doesn't want to go gallivanting off down the main line. I'm proud of my work and what I do, even if you're not. Well, it's a good job you don't want to go gallivanting. You'd probably fall apart if you actually had to handle a proper train. And then you'd have to go back to shunting coaches. Grizzly helpers." Nigel snorted away to collect Bear's coaches. As he pulled off, Thomas noticed a small crowd of enthusiasts taking Nigel's photograph. Thomas had a naughty idea and slunk away. That afternoon, Thomas found the Fat Controller at Tidmouth Station. "Good afternoon, sir," he smiled innocently. "I see there are plenty of enthusiasts gathering at Knapford Station recently." "Oh yes, it's to do with Nigel. He's become a Lazarus of sorts, according to enthusiasts," said the Fat Controller. "We should put on a special event dedicated to Nigel," insisted Thomas. "An LNER-themed gala would suffice for the enthusiasts. They must be eager to be given a ride behind the last ever J50. "That sounds a splendid idea. We can gather all our locomotives associated with the LNER and have Nigel as the star attraction. Very well done, Thomas. The Fat Controller hurried away to make the arrangements. Thomas just grinned cheekily. No real loss if he does end up falling apart. When Nigel heard the news, he was very cross, but he didn't want to seem selfish as he knew the Fat Controller's heart was in the right place. The main event would be Nigel, who was to pull a passenger train across the island to the works, where a newly mended Gordon would return the train back to the big station. He soon became concerned, remembering his incapabilities when pulling a passenger train along the Bluebell Railway. "It's going to go wrong, I just know it is," he muttered to himself. When at last the gala arrived, Nigel still felt very apprehensive. Bear tried to cheer him up. "Just think, all these people have come to see you." "I wish they hadn't," grumbled Nigel. "Should I just slap some sloping tanks on Duck and hope I get away with it?" "You're not camera shy, are you?" smirked Bear. "No, it's just I know I'm no good over long distances, and I'm not interested in doing so either. I like working in the station. I just wish I didn't have to go." The enthusiasts piled into the train, and the guard blew his whistle. "Well, there goes. Ta-ra, Bear," and Nigel eased his 6-coach train slowly out of the station. At first, Nigel's concerns seemed to diminish as lots of people all stopped to wave and take his photograph. Bertie the bus, who had never seen Nigel before, had to look twice in surprise. And Trevor the traction engine had a good long look as he didn't recognise the unfamiliar tank engine pass by. But soon, Nigel's doubts were proven when he began to feel a slight pain. "If I can just make it to the works, I'll be alright," he panted. "I can have a nice long rest then." "If you're not feeling well, we can stop at Elsbridge Station," advised the driver. Nigel was about to agree when Elsbridge came into sight, but standing at the platform was Thomas. Nigel snorted. "I don't think so. We're not stopping here." Thomas watched smugly as Nigel clanked past. "My goodness, he looked to be in a state," puffed Toby worriedly. "Well, it serves him right," sniffed Thomas pompously. "Thomas," groaned Toby, "no engine deserves to be in pain. Now I'm about to leave for the works for the LNER gathering. By the looks of poor Nigel, he isn't going to make it." Thomas thought for a moment and told Toby everything. Meanwhile, Nigel soldiered on, but the pace had slowed right down. Nigel was in agony. "My axle boxes are burning me," he sobbed. The driver stopped Nigel from doing any more damage to himself and halted the train in the middle of the main line. The driver and fireman inspected their engine, and indeed, Nigel's axle boxes were red hot. "You were right, old boy," sighed the driver. "You just aren't cut out for these long journeys." Nigel felt like crying. An hour had passed until the opposite line was cleared, and Thomas and Toby arrived with the Fat Controller. He climbed down from Henrietta. "A valiant effort, my dear Nigel," he praised, "but I'm afraid you've delayed the entire event." "Excuse me, sir," said Thomas. "It's really my fault." Thomas told the Fat Controller what he had done. "I will not tolerate being manipulated by my own engines. You will take this train unassisted to its destination, and then you will take over Nigel's duties as station pilot. I will not stand for your juvenile behaviour, Thomas. You have put Nigel in a terrible position. Maybe shunting coaches will remind you I rewarded you with a branch, and I can so easily take it away if I so choose. Have I made myself clear?" thundered the Fat Controller. "Completely transparent, sir," quivered Thomas. Toby pulled Nigel to the works. He felt embarrassed, but he was welcomed with cheers and whistles. Gordon was in high spirits. Well, 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 2 NRS engines taken out with hot boxes. We're not exactly doing Sir Nigel Grizzly any justice, he chuckled. Hope to see you up and running again soon, dear Nigel. Nigel began to cheer up. It seemed he had earned the respect of the big blue engine. By the time Thomas puffed wearily in with the special train, all the LNER engines had been lined outside the works for an impressive photo shoot. Nigel didn't feel sad anymore. Thomas watched on. He felt very ashamed. When the gala ended and Gordon had left the enthusiasts' train, Thomas apologized to Nigel. "I'm sorry I put you in this position," said Thomas sadly. "I shouldn't have been so pretentious. I forgot all about who I am and where I came from." Nigel smiled. "You and me, we're not so different. We're plucky little tank engines who are proud of who we are and what we do. But the only difference is, I'm comfortable with not having an adventure. I don't want to see the world. I've seen enough of it, and it's quite a scary and uncertain place. My life is to be nothing but a station pilot, and that's the way I want it to be." "And I respect that," said Thomas humbly. Thomas worked hard as station pilot, though he found he'd forgotten quite a lot about how intense and busy it all was. It brought back many memories for Thomas of his youth, and realised what a big responsibility he once had on such young buffers. The Fat Controller soon forgave Thomas, and he was very happy to be back on his branch line again once Nigel had returned. Nigel had won the hearts of all the engines. The bigger engines daren't order him around. They know not to test his patience, and the diesel engines respect him for not judging them all on the actions of one. He's kind, humorous, and a good friend to many. A true Northwestern engine in the eyes of the Fat Controller. If you are ever lucky to catch Nigel off guard, you will notice him standing in the station, watching the other engines depart, and see him smile, for he knows he has finally found a home.